Hello, team players. Elves are one of the most popular ancestries in ttrpgs, and now you can play them in Starfinder. So let's talk about their options. So of course, we first have to start with heritages, and we start with the Asnan elf. These elves have evolved so much that they can communicate mentally with any creature that's within 30 feet of them that shares a language. However, this does not give you access to their thoughts and communicates no information than normal speech would. Effectively, this means you can essentially make plans with your allies without anybody knowing about it, which is fantastic. Planning is an awesome way to work with your team, and these elves can just do it as a heritage thing, which is fantastic. Moving on, we have the Azarian elf. These guys are the Starfinder version of Cavern Elves. They just get dark vision. That's it. Pretty simple, but highly effective. Dark vision is very good in a lot of situations. Highly recommend this heritage. Next we have the Avarian Elf. These elves can, during their daily preparations, gain the additional lore skill for lore for a specific place until they make daily preparations once again. But this feat is temporary, meaning you can't use it as a prerequisite for any other feat or character option. However, these are great for knowledge. After all, a lore skill is very effective for knowledge. You can also use this to make money, which is another fantastic way to use this, especially since you can just take the lore for wherever you're at. Fantastic way to help the team. And then we have the Sorvarian Elf. These guys gain a +2 bonus on checks to identify magic and decipher writing, and a bonus on perception checks to sense motive. And when they attempt to check to sense motive, the perception DC doesn't increase if the target is concealing their features or otherwise hidden from you. In addition, you gain the Castrovian language. In other words, you can sense their motive even if they're hiding from you. Which is dope. And identifying magic and decipher writing is awesome. Again, this is another one to get information, and information is always good. This one can be very good for something like a wizard or just any intelligence-based class, or even wisdom for that matter. Now let's talk about first level ancestry feats. Starting with Sight the Deep Lore. You become trained in society. If you're already trained in society, you become trained in a different skill of your choice. You also gain the Blend In skill feat, which allows you to use society instead of stealth to blend into the crowd. And if you're in a city, you can use society instead of deception to impersonate a non-specific individual. In other words, this is great for any class that wants to be stealthy, but isn't exactly good at dex. So if your intelligence is higher than your dexterity, you may consider this one. Then we have Diplomat's Facade. You become trained in deception. And of course, if you're already trained in deception, you get a different skill of your choice. You also gain the Lie to Me skill feat. This allows you to use your deception DC to attempt to see if someone's lying to you rather than your perception DC. So if your charisma is higher than your wisdom, this might also be a great one for you. Next we have Legacy of Betrayal. Once per day, if you're about to make a saving throw against an enemy's ability and you believe the triggering enemy was your ally within the last hour, as a reaction, you can reroll the triggering saving throw. However, you must use the second result even if it's worse. Another fantastic option. This is just great defense. I mean, rerolling a saving throw is always good. This is a pretty rare thing you can do in Pathfinder or Starfinder. This is another fantastic one. However, it is kind of situational because you have to believe that the triggering enemy was your ally within the last hour, which means basically they had to betray you. And then we have Memories of Before, which is another reaction you can use once per day whenever you fail a skill check or saving throw. You can re-roll the triggering check, but you must use the new result even if it's worse. You also become Frightened 1. In some ways this is better, and in other ways it's worse than Legacy of Betrayal. With Legacy of Betrayal, you can only do it on a saving throw. But with Memories of Before, you can do it on a skill check or a saving throw. However, you also become frightened 1 after you use this, which means everything is going to go down for you after you use this. If you're willing to become frightened, then this one is the one you want, especially since you can do it for more stuff. But honestly, you're only going to be frightened 1 for a round, so the second one might actually be more worth it, since you can use it on skill checks too, rather than just saving throws. But you have to fail it too, is the thing. Yeah, personally, I think this one is better than Legacy of Betrayal, simply because, number 1, Legacy of Betrayal, you have to use it when you're about to attempt a saving throw. You don't know whether you succeeded or failed, and you have to take the second result. Whereas with Memories of Before, you do it when you fail. So I don't know. That's just my 2 cents. Let me know what you think about these 2 feats in the comments below. For level 5, we're going to start with Carry Their Memories. During your daily preparations, you can gain the Assurance feat for 1 skill you're trained in. This lasts until you prepare again. But the feat is temporary, so you can't use it to satisfy a prerequisite for another feat or character option. But this one is fantastic if you take it for the right skill. There's some skills that aren't really all that great with Assurance, but Assurance is a good feat if you pick the right skill for it. For example, it's an excellent feat to take for Medicine. If you want to be able to take 10 on basically any skill you want, this is fantastic. And then we have Elven Caution. Once per day when you roll initiative, you can stride up to half your speed. Another fantastic one. This is just a free action, basically. Being able to stride as a free action, yeah, it's only half your speed, but so what? If you're fast enough, this can be insane. I highly recommend this one. And then we have This You Queen. You can roll computers instead of intimidation to use the coerce action. And you're threatening to share copies of embarrassing moments of your target's past. But in addition to the normal effects of coerce, the target is temporarily immune to any additional coerce attempts from you for 24 hours. If you fail, they're instead immune for 1 week, and on a critical failure, they're immune for 1 month. Again, this is a good one if you have a higher intelligence than charisma, and you're good with computers and not intimidation. But this is only to coerce people, not for demoralize. It's good for outside of combat, but if you want to demoralize someone, you're still going to have to use intimidation. At level 9, we have Grace of the Ages. Once per day, if you're damaged by an attack, you can use a reaction to step away from the triggering attacker. If an effect with an escape DC prevents you from stepping, you can attempt to escape instead. Basically, you either get to step away from whoever damaged you, or you get to escape from like a grapple or something. This one is fantastic for spellcasters. This is a great way to take away enemies' action economy, especially if you have elf stuff on top of this. You do have to be damaged by the attack, so, if they miss, you can't do this. But otherwise, pretty darn good. Next we have Swear Vengeance. Once per day, as a reaction, if you would be reduced to 0 hit points, but not immediately killed by a creature you're aware of, you can avoid being knocked out and remain at 1 hit point, and your wounded condition increases by 1. You also become quickened for 1 round, and can use the extra action to stride towards, or make a strike against the triggering creature. This is flat out a better version of Orc Ferocity. Just flat out. You get the same effects of Orc Ferocity, but you also get to be quickened for a round and can make a stride or make a strike against the triggering creature. It is fantastic. At level 13, we have Bright Bomb. Once per day, you can step and create a bright light in a 5-foot burst centered on 1 corner of your previous space. Creatures in the area must attempt a fortitude save against your class DC or spell DC. On a failure, they're blinded and dazzled for 1 round. On a critical failure, they're blinded for 2 rounds and dazzled for 1 minute. This one's okay. I mean, blinded and dazzled are good conditions, but this is only once per day, and it's only a 5-foot burst, meaning enemies have to be pretty close to you to even use this. So it's definitely good, but not great. And then we have Make Them Pay. This is a spell shape feat requiring one action. If the next action is to cast a spell that deals damage to a single target, and if that spell doesn't have the duration, you gain a circumstance bonus to damage equal to twice the sum of your frightened and wounded conditions, to a maximum of plus 12, if you have one or both conditions. This one is good. I mean, the wounded condition isn't going to come up that often, but the frightened is definitely. And it's a maximum of plus 12. This can do some pretty good damage back, so it's good. And at level 17, we have Exact Retribution, which requires Swear Vengeance. When you swear vengeance, make a single strike against the triggering creature. If the strike brings a foe to 0 hit points, the triggering activation of Swear Vengeance doesn't count against its frequency, and you decrease your wounded value by 1. Effectively meaning you stay up, you don't become wounded, and you can hit them. And you can keep doing this as long as you continue to bring creatures down to 0 hit points, which is dope. I mean, this is just a good way to stay up, and the longer you stay up, the more you can help your team. And then we have Spell Sail, which is another spell shape 1 action. If your next action is to cast a spell that targets a creature within 60 feet, you immediately teleport to an open space adjacent to that spell's target. Meaning, this is fantastic for touch spells. I mean, even if you're 60 feet away, you immediately teleport right to them and then can touch them. It's fantastic for any build that wants to use touch spells. I mean, granted, most spellcasters aren't going to want to be in melee combat, but if you're a spellcaster that can be in melee combat, this is amazing. It does take your entire turn, more than likely, but it's still very, very good. I haven't looked into all the answers for this book, but of the ones I've read so far, Elf is definitely one of the best ones. There's so many good feats you can take. It's kind of ridiculous. And keep in mind, if your GM allows it, you can take Pathfinder Elf feats as well, which can be very good with some of these feats. I highly recommend you play an Elf for one of your campaigns. If you guys enjoyed this video, you may like these other Ancestry videos I've done for Starfinder. And make sure you subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this video. It really would help me out. Thank you guys so much for watching. And remember, teamwork is vital. It helps us solve problems.